はい、ただいまより QA セッション
We
を
would
始めたい
like
と
to
思います。
begin the QA
最
session.
初に登壇者をご紹介い
I
た
will
します。
introduce
代表取締役社
members
長
on
豊
stage.
田章男でございます。
President and CEO Akio Toyoda.
チーフテクノロジーオフィサ
Chief
ー
Technology
前田正彦で
Officer
ございます。
Masahiko Maeda.
チーフブランディングオフィ
Chief
サー
Branding
佐藤浩二
Officer
でございます。
Koji Sato.
デザイン領域統括部長
Senior General Manager of
サイモンハンプリーズでございま
Design
す。
Simon Humphreys.
それで
Keep
は
your
お願いいた
questions
します。
to
挙手
one
をお願いいたし
question
ま
per
す。
person. Please raise your hand if you have any questions.
それでは2列目の
In the second
読売の
row,
香取さんお願いいたします。
Mr. Katori from Yomiuri Shimbun.
すみません、読売新聞の香取です。
I
今
am
日はよろしくお願い
Katori
します。
from Yomiuri newspapers.
まず先ほ
Thank
ど
you.
2030年の
So you
目標
earlier
350
said
万
that
台ということで、
3.5 million
これまでの
for 20 by 2030, and that is a large upward revision from 2 million that you have been targeting before. And Toyota was seen to be conservative against electrified vehicles, and this is a significant change. So what is the reason for this big change?
私からまずちょっと答え
I'll first start by
前から
responding, and then I'll have the other members make additional
まずで
comments.
すね、
First of all,
200万台という
for the
量
2
も
million
大変な
units,
量だと思いま
that
す。
is quite a volume as well.
200万台の例え
2
ば
million
自動車会社だとですね、
units, if it is an automobile company, most of the Chinese big companies, OEMs, will have about that vehicle. And then we're adding another 1.5 million and making that to 3.5 million. And when it's 3.5 million, for example, it's equivalent to like Daimler,
その
PSA,
鈴木自動車さん
Suzuki
その
Motors,
お会
this
社様が
kind of
全てを
companies'
EV に
size. If these companies made all of their vehicles that they sell to BEVs, it will be about this amount.
とてつもない
That's the size and volume that we're talking about.
数を言ってると
A significant
いうことをですね
volume
まずは
is
ご認
what
識
we
いた
are
だきたいというふうに
talking
思い
about
ます。
here. I
そ
hope you
して
can understand
この
that first of
BEV
all.
もまた
And
FCEV もそうなんです
Also,
が
not only BEVs,
これ
but
カーボン
FCEVs
ニュートラル
included
と取って
and other
してみますと
EVs included. For carbon neutrality, it's about the using part of the car.
いろんな意味でですね
And in
カーボン
many
ニュー
ways,
トラルフリーなんですが
for it
先ほ
will
どプレ
be
ゼンの中でも言い
carbon
ました
neutral, carbon free type of vehicles. But like I said in my message, it also depends on what energy we use. And depending on the region we're talking about, it might become a carbon reducing vehicle or a carbon neutral vehicle.
今年 COP26 が
And
ござい
this
ま
year
した
we had COP26.
COP26 がある中で
And
各
as
国の
COP26 was
い
held,
ろんな形での
each
エネルギー
country
政策
has
等が
made
見えてきた
their
段
announcements
階に
and
おい
made
て
clear
ですね
about the energy policies that they have. And as we saw those policies becoming clearer, we have been thinking about our carbon neutrality initiatives and have come up with a plan to see a realistic plan. So as we have had this discussion and sophisticated our plan, we have come up with this number.
はい、実際にはですね、
In real terms,
社長が言われたような
like
ということもありますけれども、
Mr. Toyoda explained, that was the
例えば
background.
米国の
For
大
example,
統領令が出るとか、
the U.S. presidential decree being issued and others, we have seen more the change be clear and active in the market. So with that as a background, we have had discussions to come up with a volume that we believe we have to prepare to be able to deliver. So using this plan and volume, we will be doing the preparations and development work in the company. And we said that this is one criteria. So this will be a criteria, a guideline that we will use to do the necessary preparations on the development side, production side, and also make necessary investments. So that will be all in the background here for the numbers that we have announced.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you.
少しレクサス
Well,
について
if I
ちょっ
can
と私
add a
の
little
さ
bit
せていただきたいと
from
思
the
います
Lexus perspective.
今回レクサスですね
This
200
time,
万台の
Lexus
目
has
線でという
said
ことで
that we are going to target 1 million
実はレクサ
units.
ス今年の3月
Lexus in March this
電動化
year
に対する取り組み
for the
レクサス
electrified
エレクトリカイドという
Lexus electrified initiatives have been announced this year. Toward 2025, the electrified vehicles popularization is going to be accelerated. That was the announcement. And as Mr. Toyoda explained in his speech, in the world, we are seeing a quick change, and especially in the luxury segment, the advanced technologies and also expectations to BEVs is rapidly increasing. And energy mix will be different according to each region, but for the luxury segment, we are seeing a rapid mindset change of the customer. So we want to be flexible to meet those expectations. That is why we have made this announcement this time. From Maeda-san, he talked about the setting the criteria or guideline. So once we set this kind of a target as a guideline, we'll be able to work on practical activities to understand and clarify, identify what kind of issues we will have so that we can accelerate the necessary activities. That is the background of the announcement made today. Thank you.
Next question, please. A journalist from Nikkei, please, in the third row. Thank you. I am Yuzawa from Nikkei. Thank you very much for this opportunity. So, toward 3.5 million vehicles, Maeda-san mentioned the increased amount of investment. At this point in time, what sort of investment do you have in mind? If you have any information that you can share with us, I would appreciate it. Thank you. Now, at the time of battery IR, we announced a number of 1.5 trillion yen. As Mr. Toyoda mentioned in his presentation, we will be increasing that to 2 trillion yen. Now, 3.5 million vehicles. R&D investment will be involved, totaling 2 trillion yen, another 2 trillion yen, so the total would be 4 trillion yen. In addition, when it comes to all electrified fleet outside of batteries, we have hybrid, we also have plug-in hybrid and FCEVs. So we are making another 4 trillion yen of investment. The total, therefore, is 8 trillion yen based on the criteria that I mentioned earlier. We are not saying that we are going to use it all up. This is an indication that we are ready. And when actually spent the amount, how much we will be able to reduce the cost and reduce the lead time. And when it comes to timing, if we can reduce and shorten lead times, we can certainly make our investment more efficient and effective. And that is an area that we are especially careful about. So, based on all such assumptions, we are now talking about 8 trillion yen. Thank you for your question.
Next person, please. I think it is NHK. NHK, please. I am Noguchi from NHK. Thank you. So, as I watched the presentation earlier, I could see how you are emphasizing the EV strategy, and you are talking about a full lineup, so a strategy plan for all directions. And going forward, there are a variety of electrified vehicles, but are you saying that you're going to be further emphasizing battery EVs, but for your 360 degrees or full lineup electrified vehicle strategy has not changed? Which is it? Well, for us, currently, as we strive to achieve carbon neutrality, we're going to make a company-wide effort to achieve that target. This has not changed. But as you know, Toyota has a global, you are a global company with a full lineup of products. And in that sense, there has been a big change in the countries and regions' policies, and the way the vehicles are used is now more diversified. In addition, the market or the customers, when we look at them, which will be the final menu they would like to choose. This is something that Toyota cannot control. It will be out of our control. And just because we make a decision, it doesn't mean that our decision will be the solution. So what I have been repeatedly saying is that for Toyota, for which option will be selected, that is not what we're going to decide on. We are going to have a more wider option available. And this has been the same as before. And going forward, for all of the menus that we're going to have on the list, we will be seriously engaged to provide all of these options. And there's a tendency that some people say that Toyota is not interested in EVs. That's what we hear a lot. But as I said before, it's 2 million. When you think about the volume that we're talking about, it's a huge volume. But since we have the total volume of 10 million for our sales, then everyone will think about the ratio. But even if it's 2 million, it's a huge number. And we're saying now 3.5 million as a baseline. But then people will still say that, well, Toyota has, for Toyota, it's 10 million, it's 3.5 million out of the 10 million. But for us, we want to keep the options for everyone available. And rather than making a selection and concentration of which path to go on, we want to watch how the customers and market will change, and we want to be prepared to flexibly meet the expectations and preferences. And I believe that in this way we will be able to enhance our competitiveness, and I believe that this approach will be able to provide a timely proposal to the customers and the market. And that is the way that we will be able to survive. So this has not changed from before. For all of the options, we are not going to decide on the priorities. All of these options, we're going to put our full effort in. So, in a sense, just because I'm riding a fuel cell electrified vehicles, it's not that we're prioritizing the fuel cells and so the hydrogen engine, hydrogen engine, just because I'm riding it, it's not that we're having a full priority on that. That doesn't mean that. So, for all of the employees, the suppliers, and also the affiliated companies, and the 5.5 million of the people working in the automobile industry, with all of these friends and partners, we're going to work on this with this mindset, and we are having these activities global-wide. And our weapon in our global operation is the full lineup of products. So us battling in the global field with a full lineup of products, we want to make a proposal of a way to battle, to be in this market. And we are really putting our serious effort into this approach. Whether it's a multi-solution approach or otherwise, we are very seriously working with our full effort in all of these areas.
Can I just add a little bit to Toyoda-san's comments there? I think that the future, of course, is very difficult to understand for everybody. That's the first comment. But within that future, one thing that we can probably say for sure is that each region and all of society is becoming more diverse.
はい、私の方から少しだけ豊田社長の言ったことにコメントを加えたいと思います。将来、未来というのはもちろんみんなにとって全員にとって理解をするのは難しい、わからないものです。しかし未来について一つだけ確実に言えることは、地域もそして社会もどんどんと多様化しているということです。
So one of the next steps for Toyota, more than anything, is to build on our strengths, which is understanding what customers really want. And within that diversity, we see customers increasingly more confident in their choices, particularly with regard to products and design.
次にトヨタが何をできるのか、次のステップ、トヨタにとっては何かというと、それはトヨタの強みを上げていくこと、そしてそれはすなわちお客様が何を欲しているのかということを理解することなのです。多様性の中で私たちが見ているのは、お客様はその自信を持って自分たちが選択をするようになっている製品やその選択肢においてお客様自身が自信を持つようになっています。
And what we need to do now, probably the biggest hurdle or challenge, is to increase customer acceptability in carbon neutral based design, I think. You know, the principle, all people agree that this type of direction is a necessity, but whether or not they're willing to accept that in practice is the next big hurdle, I think. For example, reusable fabric, reusable materials, all these type of factors, we'll have to change the way of customer thinking. Then perhaps we can get to a point where we can achieve the numbers that are being talked about.
そして今何が必要とされているのか、また次のハードルは何なのか、課題チャレンジは何なのかと考えたときに、私が思うにそれはお客様の側でカーボンニュートラルなデザインや考え方を受け入れられるようになるということが次のハードルになるのではないかと考えています。もちろん全員みんながこの方向性としてはこういったカーボンニュートラルの方向に行く必要性は原則として理解しています。だけれどもそれを受け入れるその実用的な面で自分が選択するということが次のハードルではないかと考えています。例えば再利用されたファブリックだったりですとか素材で再利用された素材を活用していくですとかこういったことすべてが関わっているすべてが変化をする必要があります。お客様の考え方もこうして変わっていく必要性があると思っています。次のハードルがそこでそこを乗り越えないとその数字のところにはたどり着かないと思っています。
私から少し2つ
And if I may make two additional comments
全方位戦略を
for this full lineup strategy. The reason why we are continuing this strategy, there's two efforts that we have been continuing, and one is to make the development more efficient, the development process being more efficient. For the one model, 30 to 40% of the development efficiency has been improved, and this is because we have worked on creating the TNGA. Establishing TNGA has a large effect on the development efficiency, and now as we expand the BEV side, we have been able to strengthen our basic capabilities. And in addition, another effort we have been making is branding. As we have announced today, the reason why Lexus is going to be leading the BEV products, and this is because of the characteristics and trends of the luxury market, but also because advanced technology will be led and be Lexus the front runner as the corporate brand. And then for Gazoo Racing, like we talked about hydrogen engine, Mr. Toyoda talked about that. So motorsports is going to be the starting line to look into the possibilities of the carbon neutral fuels. So we'll be making all these challenges so that all the brands can utilize their strength and also look into explore the wide area of possibilities. And that is a strength that Toyota has. And this is the background on why we want to continue our full lineup strategy. And for this full lineup strategy, I'd like to make some additional comments from the customer's perspective. For example, the US or North American market, the electric power supply and the usage situation, the West and East Coast, as you know, these West and East Coast will have a preference for the environment-friendly cars, and also they have a good established infrastructure. But when you go to the Midwest or into the central areas of US, the usage environment will be different. It will be quite tough to shift immediately into using battery EVs. So even if it's one country, looking into the different areas of one country, there are areas where battery EVs is more convenient and not so convenient. Therefore, the customers will be selecting different types of products depending on their situations. And that is why we need to have a wide variety of products available so that we can provide to our customers. And like you know, Brazil, they have the bioethanol fuel already being commercialized. And for Toyota, for bioethanol, we have a combination with our products. And bioethanol, it is more lower in price than gasoline. So in the market, it is more marketable. So thinking of these actual situations of difference of each region, we don't want to force the battery EVs into this kind of a market because they might not want to buy it. And like Mr. Toyoda said, global globally, Toyota has a global operation, and we have been building trust in each of these regions that we operate in with our products. So we don't want to break this damage this relationship. We want to continue to look into the environment that they are using their cars and their preferences, and be able to meet their expectations. So as a result, we'll have to take this full lineup strategy. So that is our situation. Thank you.
はい、それでは次の方お願いします。
Thank you very much. Next question, please. In the first row, a journalist from Toyo Keizai, please. Thank you very much. I am from Toyo Keizai, and your battery EVs plans are very ambitious, and procurement of batteries appears to be the key. Within your presentation, 1.5 trillion yen or is increased to 2 trillion yen for development of batteries. And earlier, there was a talk about the North Carolina plans, and you also have alliances in PBS and so forth. So procurement of battery is an area that I'm most interested in. Thank you very much for your question. For different regions, basically, we would like to see the local production, local consumption, while considering the logistics fees and so forth. But how to procure at what level of volumes, we still are yet to see the clear picture of that. Basically, we have to reduce the single line unit cost and come up with the most optimum procurement plan for batteries. And at which point in time, which markets to launch into would also are dependent on what sort of regulations will develop in those different areas. So basically, we plan for local procurement, but depending on the stages of the development of the market, we still have to continue working with different types of partners to be sustainable in procurement. But as Toyoda-san mentioned earlier, as for materials, Toyota Tsusho has had long history of securing natural resources, and we are safe until 2030. So we will have both partners' help and in-house production. The basic materials will be secured. In 2030, 200 gigawatts hour or plus was your original plan. It also has to be increased because of 3.5 million vehicles. How much would that increase be? Based on that criteria, 280 gigawatt hour is something that we are looking at. Thank you very much.
はい、それでは次の方お願いします。
Next person, please.
では、一番前のジャーナリスト山本さんお願いいたします。
Yamamoto-san, journalist in the front row, please. I'm Shinya Yamamoto, a freelance journalist. Thank you. This time, there were a lot of specific announcements made, and I was quite surprised. But what I want to know more is about President Toyoda's true feeling. For hydrogen and hybrids, I think you have a lot of aspirations, and your true thoughts have been made public in many occasions. But for battery EVs, I think it's more like, yes, we're doing it, a kind of a business-like reality announcement kind of presentation. So I want to strike the point and ask you, for you, President Toyoda, do you like battery EVs or not? Well, maybe if it's difficult to respond as president of the company, you can respond as Morizo.
素晴らしい質問ですね。
Great question.
あえて言うなら、
Well, if I had to make an answer. Well, the battery EVs that Toyota was developing in the past, I was not interested in. But the EVs that we are now developing for the future, I am interested in. And the reason why I say that is because the first EV that I've driven, it was a RAV4 EV. That's the first Toyota EV I've driven. But at that time, for my driving skills was not so good either, was in those times. So the impression that I had at that time, probably it's not worth even talking about it. But the level up that I've been seeing is the electrified vehicle for the 86, and I've had a test drive in this Megawave. I forgot how many years ago it was, but the comment that I gave after my test drive was that it's an electric vehicle. That's what I said. And when it's an electric vehicle, it becomes all more or less the same kind. It can be all grouped as an electric vehicle, not different from each other. But for us, we have the Lexus brand and we have the Toyota brand, and we are a OEM pursuing what is the distinctiveness of that brand. But then if it's EVs, it becomes more like a commodity. So that was the past. So like you have said, Yamamoto-san, business-like, I was, of course, supporting, but driver Morizo may have a different opinion. So that was how you've seen it, and maybe you were right. But now I'm a master driver, and as a master driver, the reason why I became a master driver and the training that I came through, I always use a FR vehicle for my driving, and also that was FR vehicle was the reason for becoming a master driver. But recently, I'm now in the rally races and also Super Taikyu races, and in these motorsports gemba from the FR vehicle, I've now changed it to a four-wheel drive vehicle. This is the car that I use in my motorsports activities. And so my master driver sensibility probably has changed with this vehicle change, and that will be the power, the motor efficiency. The motor will have a higher efficiency of power than the gasoline engine. So in a certain sense, like if we have a four-wheel drive platform with controls, it can become an FF car or an FR vehicle. So if we have that kind of control technology, then Morizo in any circuit, any rally competition, Morizo will be able to drive fast and safe. That's what I think. And in the past national championships, Nori-san won. He became champion, and at that circuit, the rookie racing drivers, there are many rookie racing drivers now. They're very active in motorsports. So we have the professional drivers, and those driving skills of those professional drivers are reflected into the vehicles. So I think we are now able to reflect those skills and make a fun-to-drive car. So that is the higher expectation I have now. And like myself, a gentleman driver, whether it's dry or wet, or if it's a mountainous road or a snowy road or whatever, or rough road, and any kind of road, a fun-to-drive car that you can drive safely, with this platform, there's a possibility that we can develop that kind of a car. That is a big change point of our company. But just with control technology, if we try to create the flavor, it's like you have an overcooked noodles and putting tempura on it and say that it's delicious. But in the past several decades, starting with our TNGA initiatives, we have started the base, the framework, and then the chassis, the body rigidity. We have really been focused on making ever better cars in all of these areas. A very steady improvement, steady kaizen has been accumulated in the past decades. And now we have the Shimoyama proving grounds open, and therefore we are able to use these proving grounds and test the cars with tough conditions and train the car. So with this environment, we, I think, are now at a point where a more safe and a more fast driving and a more fun to drive vehicle can be developed as an EV. So including BEVs, I have expectations for Toyota vehicles. So that's why it's not anymore just a business matter. And even for driver Morizo, from a Morizo hat, I have strong expectations, and it will be very interesting. And probably the autonomous driving vehicle will be different if it is this kind of a OEM creating it. So that is also included included into our plan. So from your perspective, maybe I hope you understand that we are very much serious in BEVs, FCEVs, hybrids, and also the gasoline conventional vehicles that smell like gasoline and have a big sounds. We're still very much serious. So as Morizo had and also as my president had, that has not changed. But again, I want to repeat myself that for any of these fields that we work on, we're working with our friends and partners very seriously. And if it is something that our customers will be willing to choose, then, and if they can become into smiles, that is the kind of products we want to provide from Toyota. And so the developers, we want to have a strong feelings for it and have our affection and develop it. And then we hope that the customers will select it. Whether it will be selected is an uncontrollable for us, so that is why we have a full lineup for our strategy.
Thank you very much. Next question, please. I see a hand over there. Mihori-san, is that you? Please. Thank you. I am Mihori, a freelance journalist. Next year in Japan, BZ4X will be launched. And at the time, the national dealership will have to have fast chargers. Do you have a plan of realizing that? Because I really feel it is necessary for your dealership to have the fast chargers. We do have a plan, yes, but it may take longer. 2025, the year 2025 would be the target where all the dealers in Japan will have fast chargers. For our customers, I believe that's an important part of the infrastructure. But on the other hand, in Japan, unfortunately, we're seeing the declining number of chargers installed. I don't know whether we are in the transition period, but, well, certainly, we have to make sure that our electric vehicles will be easily charged for our customers. So once again, that's another area that we are full in. Now, when it comes to charging equipment, this is an area where different parties must collaborate and cooperate. OEMs for BEVs and FCEVs, well, certainly some of the OEMs can establish some by themselves, but that should not be left to the usage of the customers of only that particular OEMs. The infrastructure should be commonly shared, and that is an area that Toyota would like to work harder to realize. I hope the media would also send messages of making electric vehicles more convenient for the consumers, because there is only so much OEMs can do when it comes to infrastructure. Lexus, 100%. We talked about the US, Europe, and China. 2,900 in Europe, 1,700 in China, and 5,000 in Japan would be the plan for the chargers. Now, non-Toyota owners should also have an easy access to the chargers that we provide. That's another important consideration, and I thank you for your question.
Next person, please. Wall Street Journal, please.
Wall Street Journal, Sean McLean. Apologies for the question in English. The question is for Mr. Toyota or anybody else. I was wondering if you could help me and the rest of my colleagues understand what exactly the message is you're trying to send today. On the one hand, you say you're going to sell as many EVs as you can, 3.5 million. But on the other hand, you want to make sure that we know that you're serious about zero emissions. So as the largest car maker in the world, why are you only targeting 35% of your current volume? Why not go for 100% or 50% as many of your competitors have done? Now, why is 3.5 million sufficient in your mind?
はい、英語での質問を失礼いたします。ウォール・ストリート・ジャーナルショーン・マクレーンと申します。この質問は豊田所長あるいは他の方に答えていただいても構わないんですが、私の質問というのがここに座っている私たちに、今日のメッセージ一番何を伝えたいかというところを理解するために質問をさせてください。一方ではこれからトヨタはできるだけ多くの EV を販売していく目線は350万台だというふうにおっしゃっていましたが、その一方でゼロエミッションに関しての活動は真剣に取り組んでいると。世界最大のカーメーカーであるトヨタがなぜ今の販売台数の 35% を目標にしているのでしょうか。なぜ他の競合他社のように 100% ですとか 50% という目標ではないのでしょうか。なぜトヨタとしては350万台が十分であるというふうに理解されているのでしょうか。お願いいたします。
はい。我々はカーボンニュートラルビークルを
So we have said that we are going to be reducing the carbon as much as possible with our carbon neutral vehicles, and with a baseline of 2030, we want to increase the carbon neutral vehicles. So that is what our message. Reality, in order to achieve carbon neutrality, for each country's energy demand will have a big impact on this plan. That is a reality. That's a fact. And for that, it's an uncontrollable for Toyota. So I hope that you will understand that point. So if Toyota says, because there is no energy infrastructure and no charging infrastructure, if we expand our coverage to those areas too, then the customers who actually use our cars will have to think about what kind of situation they will end up in. I think it will be very inconvenient. We will force our customers to be having an inconvenient environment to use their vehicles. So we want to avoid that inconvenience for our customers. So what we want to the people here to understand today is that currently, the market, when we look at the global market, it is a diversified market that we are dealing with. That is Toyota. Toyota is operating in a diversified global market. And for a diversified market, it's necessary to prepare a diversified solution. So I hope this point you will understand. And also, if we provide the best solution for the average person, that will be not the best solution for everyone. Therefore, currently in a time where we see no correct answer, and when everything is not clear, we want to take the approach of having a diversified approach. And for this diversified approach and diversified solution, we will work with full effort on every menu on this list. And also, there are the suppliers that are fighting together, and also the affiliated companies and partners that are working with us together, and we are all going to be working on this seriously, this attempt seriously. So I hope you understand that. And if I may add some comments regarding carbon neutrality, at the end, it's about energy security, very closely tied with energy security issue. The energy situation of each region, and also the way that cars are used by the customers and their needs must all be taken in consideration to strike the best balance. And for example, energy, you have to produce it, also transport it, and use it. So we have to think from a life cycle perspective for energy. And for the car usage environment, this will be greatly different according to the region we talk about, US, Europe. In the usage of cars area, they will be run more for long distances. But in Japan, on the other hand, compared with US and Europe, the average driving range will not be that long. So thinking of this situation, the use part, the life cycle impact of the usage of car part will be different according to the region, and also the infrastructure establishment speed will be different. So we'll have to look at this totally in perspective and try to find the best mix. So that is what we're trying to do, find the best mix. And so we've been talking about the baseline, the criteria or guideline. So if there is a sign that this situation is going to be changing more, then we have been building up up our capability to deal with the changes in an agile way and flexibly. So that is the preparation we'll be doing, and this is the kind of passion that we have and intent that we have to create the future. I hope you feel that with today's presentation.
これ逆にですね。
Well, maybe looking at this from the other side, the battery EVs, when we think of which market is most advanced with the battery EVs introduction, I think it's a good perspective to have. And as for example, is Norway that you will know. And in the passenger car market, 60 to 70% is already battery EVs in Norway. And the background of why it has popularized so much is one is taxation privilege and also the free parking and free tolling. And these kinds of situation infrastructure has been set up there in the Norway market. And as the President said, probably for the users, that was the convenience for the customers. So the convenience was prepared for them. And at the end, taxations and rules, at the end, just with us, it is uncontrollable. But when we look at the reality and we look at the markets where the customers are selecting the battery EVs, we'll have to have a cool mind to understand what is the situation that they are in selecting the battery EVs. So going forward, we now have shown today our intent, strong intent to be working on this direction. And for the customers, we need to look at the customer situation, their energy situation, like Mr. Toyoda said, and what kind of balance is needed in order to select the battery EV. So we have to discern what the necessary balance is as we move forward. Therefore, for the changes that we are now facing, we need to deal flexibly in an agile way. So it's very important for us now to prepare by shortening the lead time to do that as much as possible.
Thank
Thank you very much. The next question, please. Asahi Daily. Thank you. I am Kondo from Asahi Shimbun. Mr. Toyoda, the carbon neutral is related to employment, as you have said. 3.5 million is a new criteria that you have for 2030. The suppliers, which are being influenced, certainly is watching your announcements very closely. There are things Toyota can do, and there are others Toyota cannot do. But I would like you to revisit your thoughts about employment. Thank you. Whether carbon neutrality will be accepted. Certainly, we have to make sure that customers would accept the idea. Now, as for carbon neutrality, the numbers that we have heard so far would be for 2050 and 2040. The only target numbers that we have heard so far. We just did not want the targets to remain a target. We wanted to make sure that targets would be more achievable. For example, the cars that you are looking at right now, many of them will be launched into the market very soon and running up to 2030. In next 8 years, whatever we do will be based on how we can imagine the future with our products. We have to continue having very good discussion with the stakeholders, and I'm sure today's event will be a springboard of accelerating such discussions. We have been making quarterly announcements for a business, and as for carbon neutrality, the criteria for different products are clearly announced so that the impact can be felt by the suppliers as well as the different production sites. So, as the president of JAMA, I often said, if BEV 100% in Japan, then 1 million people would lose job in this automotive industry. out of 5 million. At that time, different companies have come out with some vague target numbers, not any specific figures and roadmaps to achieve them. That's why I said that would lead to unemployment. But now, recently, we have seen more concrete plans from different OEMs. And now, as Toyota, we are also coming up with our very concrete plans, including the models to be launched. I am sure we'll have a renewed discussion, therefore, about carbon neutrality. At any rate, just because the trend is toward BEVs, we will not just follow suit, because, as you know, the automotive industry comprises of 75% of the components procured from suppliers, and there is a pyramid of Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 suppliers supporting the industry. We've been focusing on and emphasizing the importance of leaving options at our suppliers. Some may manufacture components only for the ICE engines, and certainly carbon neutrality can become, or BEVs can become a major challenge. You cannot just say you're going toward this direction of BEVs just because that's the trend of the market. Whatever the size and scale of the company and the business models, we have to remember that there are companies and people who work there who have been making those components, and we do not want the automotive industry in the future to leave some of them behind. What they have done so far was meaningful. But still, if the market decides to go differently, then you have to come up with some ideas of how for those companies and people to continue their business. And we want to have a realistic discussion about that. Like I said in my presentation, the future will not be determined by the numbers cited by the leaders, but by the action based on passion and aspirations. Even if we have this carbon neutrality target, for the future, our action and conduct for the next 5 years will certainly change our future in 2050, and we would like to see that happen. We have done that in the past, we have done that until now, and I'm sure whatever we have done have been meaningful, and that applies to our suppliers as well. And we want to make sure that our suppliers feel the same way. That's the reason why we would like you to understand the future will not be changed overnight. The future will be the accumulation of today and the past. We've been talking about leaving many options as possible, and I would like you to embrace the idea of the importance of that. Well, 100%. Not being 100% does not mean we have aspirations. This is the best we can come up with in terms of the number of vehicles that we would like to build. I really hope you will let us and let this entire industry keep on working. Thank you very much.
Next person, please.
それではですね。日刊自動車さん、2列目ですかね。
From the Daily Automotive paper, Nikkan Jidosha, please, on the second row.
日刊自動車新聞社の福井と申します。
I'm Fukui from Nikkan
ちょっと今後
Daily Automotive
取り
News.
扱い EV についてなんですけども、
And for the EVs
コストです
that
ね。
you've talked about, I'd like to ask about the
ガソ
cost.
リン車とか
So comparing with the same size gasoline vehicle, how close will the selling price be, or when is the timing that it will be lower than the current vehicles? I think EVs, the cost will be big bottleneck. So what is the cost plans for Toyota? In the past, you said the battery cost for EVs, it's going to be halved by 2030. But for the total vehicle cost, how are you going to be reducing the cost? President Toyoda has always been saying that Toyota is going to provide affordable vehicles. So how are you going to make it more closer to the gasoline vehicles, the ICE vehicles? What is the plan? Thank you for your question. Cost reduction is really something that we have to steadily work on step by step. That's the only way that we can achieve cost reduction. That's the reality. And for example, as I explained in the battery IR event, the power efficiency, power consumption efficiency, making it more efficient, then we can reduce the usage of the power, and that will reduce the battery cost. So in order to improve the battery, this is also something that we have to steadily, step by step, make improvements. For example, the approach that we have acquired through our hybrid experience is that the car that is in driving, maybe the brake is being dragged, and that dragging feeling, the dragged brake, and also considering how to strike a balance with the feeling of the driver, we have to make the adjustments. And little by little, we have made the improvement, and that is the kind of experience that we have built up. And Toyota is that kind of a company. From the past, we have learned from our predecessors this approach of making improvements. And going forward for the R&D efforts, we will be working little by little, steadily. That's the same approach we'll do. So that's also exactly what Mr. Toyoda says, that we are going to be seriously working steadily. There is no way that we have one solution to fix, make a big improvement. We have to do steadily. So it might be we use the same perspective, come up with different ideas, and build it up one by one. An accumulation of these efforts will be ending up in the reduction of prices maybe 5-10 years in the future. But honestly speaking, when it becomes lower than the gasoline engine vehicles, it's not easy to achieve that kind of a price level. But we are not going to give up. And for whatever kind of gasoline vehicle it was, what kind of electrified vehicle it was, what kind of battery electrified vehicle it is, the not changing OEM's responsibility is to provide a reasonable and affordable vehicle that is good in quality. So that will not change, and that will be our approach.
それではぼちぼちお時間が参りましたので、これで最後の質問とさせていただきたいと思います。
The next question will be the last one.
それでは最後、では右から3番目でニュースピックスさん。
From NewsPicks. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm Kiya Arashi from NewsPicks. Recently, some environmental organizations have ranked Toyota at the very low end of the climate action ranking. They believe you are not fully into EVs. Well, at least that is my understanding. Now, once again, for Toyota, what is the positioning of EVs? And in addition, up until now, you have been working full-fledgedly on ICEs, and what will happen to ICEs and their further development? Thank you very much. Each three of us should respond to the question, because I'm looking forward to listen to their responses myself. Thank you. Now, in terms of ICE development, hydrogen engine has now become a reality. Now, you burn something and get energy. As an industrial manufactured goods, this is a technology which can be dubbed as artistic, because this has enabled many consumers comfortable and high quality of life. And it's a very important tool which achieved that. As Akio-san often says, what is evil is carbon. When you burn something, if you don't get any carbon emissions, then you can still have a major utility of what burning does. So, ICE without carbon emissions, if that is possible, it shouldn't be applied to all the scenes, to all the customers. But for some customers, they may enjoy utility of that mechanism. Now, in Brazil market, carbon neutral bioethanol is cheaper than gasoline. And it's a reality. And then, in hybrid being added, more efficient use of energy has become possible. So, there are such markets, there are such countries that exist, and we don't hear any complaints from the consumers from the market, from that country. And we are selling a sizable number of vehicles there. So, engine or ICE may be an option, although the number may come down as a part of full lineup, we will continue to have that option. In comparison of EVs and ICEs, you asked that question, so I responded from the perspective of ICEs. Now, Sato-san would address EV part of your question, because he has made an announcement the Lexus will be EV, 100% EVs. Thank you. Now, not only BEVs, but we are selling cars with wonderful experience to our consumers. So being a vehicle, being a car is important. ICEs and hybrid alike, cars should be exciting. As Mr. Toyoda often says, the smell of gasoline, the sound of ICE engines, there are some excitement from ICEs. BEVs, on the other hand, may have a different form of excitement. BEVs use electricity and motors with wonderful responsiveness, with smooth acceleration and deceleration, and quietness. Something lacking in ICEs, some new value add is there, especially for luxury segment. Customers are looking for acceleration, something not achievable by ICEs. Motors can offer such excitement. I think the time has come. What I mean by that is, under Master Driver Toyoda, we have been trained. We have been going through exercises like those of high school students, and we have been refining Lexus and continuing such exercises. And as you have seen in the video, it took 10 years for us to come up with a BEV which can make Akio Toyoda smile a little. Finally, so exploring new opportunities are still abound in BEVs, especially when it comes to performance. As Mr. Toyoda mentioned, controllability of the performance really leaves you with interesting maneuverabilities, and electrification technologies are very effective in doing so. So we may be able to build cars which is more exciting, and that's the reason why we are shifting to BEVs at Lexus. So this is my response to your question of positioning of EVs. It's an opportunity which can offer us exciting future. Simon?
Yeah, I'll keep it really short, but basically, from a design perspective, from a product perspective, an EV or the EV era is really an opportunity for new experiences for the customer, and to be able to do something that's proactively fun, exciting, and at the same time, has some value toward the future carbon neutrality. And this is an incredibly exciting time, I think. So what I want to say more than anything is sometimes it's easy to look at the rational side first, but actually the chance or the opportunities are going to come on the emotional side as well. And maybe, we've heard for the last 10 years or so that people have lost interest in cars and vehicles. I think it's exactly the opposite now. I think there's an incredible potential to open up, not only with the electric powertrain, but also connection, through digital data, and create incredible new experiences for people. That's my take on it.
手短にお答えいたします。私の観点としてはやはりデザインおよびプロダクトということになるのですけれども、 EV の時代というのはまさにお客様に新たなエクスペリエンスを提供することができるオポチュニティを包含している時代だというふうに考えます。ワクワクドキドキとする経験、これこそが将来に向けてカーボンニュートラルさえも実現できるのではないかという新たな付加価値を持って到来しているわけですので、まさにワクワクする時代となったものだと考えます。いろいろなことを考える際にまずは合理性を考えるというのは考え方として楽なのかもしれませんが、しかし実はエモーショナルな観点を考えることによってこそ新たなチャンスが生まれる場合もございます。過去10年間ほど自動車への関心が薄くなってきた、自動車離れが起こっていると言われた時代が続いておりましたけれども、しかし今は全く逆になりました。電動化されたパワートレインばかりではなく、例えばデジタルデータなどもそこでは活用することができるのではないか。新たな電動化の道筋の中から今まで考えもしなかった新たなチャンスが生まれてくるのではないかということを考えますと、まさにそうしたこれまでにない体験を提供することができるのが EV なのではないかと考える次第です。
あとその環境団体がですね、
In addition to that, you mentioned the environmental organization ranked Toyota at the lowest in climate action. Well, it is their take, but are we really backward looking in terms of EVs? We are talking about 3.5 million EVs now with 30 models.
でも前向きじゃない会社と
Will we still be judged as backward-looking in terms of electric vehicles? What should we do then? Well, I would very much like to hear the answers. What we should do if that's the case. Do we look at numbers by percentage or the absolute numbers? Vehicles are for individual customers. One vehicle per one customer. So it's not the percentage business, it's the number of absolute numbers that we are talking about, serving that number of customers. The total number of vehicles, however large that may be, we will be building each and every vehicle with great effort putting into it. Whatever the powertrain, whatever the vehicle type would be, Toyota and Lexus vehicles should continue to offer the value of fun to drive, and that's what we are determined to continue to do. Thank you very much for being with us today toward the end of the year. So many people showed their interest, and I'm extremely grateful. As for carbon neutrality, we will be active and proactive in working toward, and in this world of uncertainty, we still remain confident in offering many possible options. And each of those options, we are putting our full effort. And that's something that we wanted everyone here to understand. Thank you very much once again for being with us.
それでは予定の時間になり
Thank you
ました
very
ので、
much.
本日の説明会を
Now it is
終
time
了
to
させていただきます
close this
お忙
event.
しい中、長時間ご
Once
参加いた
again,
だきまして、
thank you
どうも
very
ありがとう
much
ございました。
for staying with us. Thank you very much.